Hello, welcome to Wednesday night's Hotline Live with Record Sport. My name is Daniel Combe. Delighted as always to be joined by the one and only Keith Jackson. Keith, how are you?
Daniel, I'm very well. How are you, mate?
I'm very good, thanks. My favourite time of the evening. Joined by yourself to pour over all of the latest.
I thought you were going to say
football
something about
news.
your favourite time of the year and the fact that you're wearing some sort of elf outfit as well, but it looks it for the shoulders down.
Listen, I'm too tall to pull off an elf. Do you know what I mean? I'm your friend who doesn't
Well,
know. I'm like 6'3", 6'4", roughly something like that, minus a foot or two.
yeah.
There's a massive game tonight, Keith. Huge game. Dundee United against Celtic at Tannadice. We'll come
Yeah.
to that. There's obviously Rangers news that we want to talk about as well. They've got a new
Mhm.
sporting director. And also Aberdeen, big night for them tomorrow night against Sparta Prague in the Conference League. And we will hopefully hear from Record Sports Scott Burns, who'll join us a little later. But only place to start, Peter Lawwell has called time on his time at Celtic. What's your thoughts?
What's my thoughts? My thoughts are a bit of mixed feelings. I'm actually, on a personal level, I actually feel genuinely sad for Peter Lawwell that he's had to leave like this. Um, but I have to say at the same time, I'm pleased for him that he has chosen to do it because it had to end. This couldn't go on. It was insufferable. It was impossible. The relationship with the fans is fractured to such a point it's never going to be recovered. He had to go, and I think for his own sanity, he had to get out of it. What I find sad for Peter Lawwell is that for the second time in his 20 years, whatever it's been at Celtic, he's having to leave out the back door, basically with his head under a blanket. And I find that appalling, to be perfectly honest with you. I realise the Celtic fans, there's a disconnect with the board. I realise that Peter Lawwell was the bogeyman for a lot of them. But I think, Daniel, I genuinely think fans at other clubs will be looking at this and just finding it so difficult to try and compute and process.
Mm-hmm.
This is a guy who, over his two stints as chief executive and chairman, 15 titles, 10 Scottish Cups, 9 League Cups, I think, or something like that. I think in total it's something like 38 trophies. There's been a quadruple treble in there, 12 domestic trophies on the spin. This is a guy that when he came into Celtic, and he's a Celtic fan, and I think that's where I think there's a sadness. This guy lives, breathes, sleeps, obsesses over Celtic, and has made it his life's work to try and improve the club. And when he went in the first instance, Celtic were second best in their own city. And here we are, 20 years down the line. They are the complete dominant force in Scottish football, never mind Glasgow. They've battered Rangers to a pulp over that period of time. And yet he's getting kind of hounded out, and there's threats to his family or suggestions about that. We know that his house, there was a really terrible security incident there not all that long ago. I just find it sad. I find it incredible. And I think if you look at his contribution to where Celtic are in terms of the trophies that have been piled up over these years, this period of unprecedented dominance, is flowers, there's petals that should be get thrown at Peter Lawwell, not abuse. They shouldn't be bullying him out the back door. They should be building a statue to him at the front door. And yet here we are. As I said, Daniel, it had reached a point where there was no return, and I think he had to get out, and it was the only way. It's the start of some sort of possible process of peace for Celtic and the support. The supporters just weren't going to tolerate Peter Lawwell for a moment longer, and you see that there's more targets. They've got more people in their sights now. Look, Michael Nicholson, I can totally understand why they're opening fire on him, as I've called him. He's the invisible man of a chief executive. Chris Mackay, financial director, he's obviously getting it in the neck. Dermot Desmond, Ross Desmond, Paul Tisdale, all these guys. There's an argument as to, I get this. I can totally understand. But Peter is a different category for me, given what he's done for the club. I just think it's incredible.
Yeah.
I think it's sad. But I think it was inevitable. It had to happen. And maybe by moving on, there can be a healing process. Although I get the feeling that the Celtic supporters, that this is just an appetizer for them. They want more. They want the change to go further. They want it to be more extreme. So I don't know. Does this solve anything? It probably feels like a small victory for the Celtic fans who have been demanding change, but it's nowhere near enough for them, is it? If you've seen all the other heads that are getting targeted, so I don't know. I just find it a real awkward one, a real difficult one to comprehend. And I think Peter's biggest mistake over all his time was probably he created a bit of a monster with the ultras and the Green Brigade and all this, and ultimately it came the monster came back and ate him towards the end of his time as chief executive, and it's now eating him for a second time. And you wonder if he had and it's ended in such a horrible way with the bad and the rancor between, and they're all Celtic supporters at the end of the day, and they're kind of tearing themselves to shreds on it. I don't know. I just the whole thing feels just so avoidable. Just so avoidable. And I think that the board have to carry so much of the blame. Absolutely, they do for their failure over the last year or so to conduct themselves like a proper football club in the transfer market. Absolutely, and I can understand absolutely why the fans are tearing their hair out watching that. But I just feel it's a bit sad at the end of the day that Peter Lawwell, once again, for the second time in just a few years, has to exit out the back door, as I said, almost with his head under a blanket.
Yeah. Well, look, we've got comments coming in, and if you want to get involved, let us know your thoughts on Peter Lawwell's resignation and anything else that takes your fancy. Please do so in the comment section below. Before I come to a couple of them, Keith, let me read out a couple of Peter Lawwell's excellent comments today on the Celtic website.
This one, this, and by the way, Celtic have made a habit over the last wee while as well of shooting themselves in the foot with their statements and their press releases, and I can see already there's a angry backlash to the way that this has been presented publicly. So yeah, read them out. As I said, they're turning self-harming into a sort of art form right here, and I think the statement and some of the words that are involved in Celtic fans, I think, who want to take it in a certain context, will look at this statement that you're about to read out and think, there they are. Even on his way out the door, it's another attack on the Celtic fans. I don't think that's how it's meant to be perceived, but I can feel already that's probably the way it will be interpreted by people who have a different agenda.
It reads to me, Keith, just like Peter Lawwell has been honest. I mean, let me read this out. He says, abuse and threats from some sources have increased and it's now intolerable. They've dismayed an alumni family at this stage of my life. I don't need this. I cannot accept this, and so I leave the club I have loved all my life. The motivations and names of these detractors can be investigated by others. I prefer to look back at my career at Celtic with deep gratitude and satisfaction. He then talks about being a schoolboy on the terraces in Europe when the European Cup was paraded at Celtic in '67. He says he's watched some of the great European nights, points out that in all of the last 2 seasons, in the last 21 years, Celtic have played group stage European football. So, it reads to me like Peter Lawwell was just being honest, but some of the comments that are coming in, Keith, as you can imagine, there's some happy Celtic fans. Not everyone, to be fair, but let me read out a few of these and get your take. Marzuno says, I shed no tears. Thousands of our loyal fans are currently being collectively punished. Post Thought says, everyone and their dog could have dominated Scottish football in the last 10 years. Objective view from the outside country. There was no competition. I would just jump in there and say, is that Peter Lawwell's fault? Do you know what I mean? Craig Marshall says, chasing the man out the club the way they did is absolutely wrong. This could go either way. It could break them. John says, Lawwell was part of a managed decline at Celtic in recent years. No tears here. Sing the Blues says, the Celtic fan chased a man out. It's given them the most dominant period in their history. And Jungle Boy says, some of the fans need to have a right good look at themselves. Personally,
it's a real mixed bag, isn't it?
It's a mixed bag, but I would fall personally on, and I feel like I'm going to get a lot of stick for this, but I would agree with Jungle Boy's sentiments there. I've got some friends, or Celtic fans as well, that are delighted today in the group chat, acting as though it's some red letter day for Celtic.
Well, be careful what you wish for.
Aye,
is
exactly.
one of the things. Now, Peter was a little bit diminished, wasn't he? In the role as chairman, he wasn't as hands on as when he'd previously been the chief executive. So maybe it doesn't make all that much of a change. Maybe this is just a token that, and the hope is that it might bring some of the Celtic supporters back down from the precipice. I'm not sure that's going to work. I think if anything, it will just give them a wee bit more encouragement to push harder and strive for more change. So I don't know where the real benefit is going to be found on this one for Celtic. It just adds into the narrative of a club which is in complete and utter disarray and civil war
Yeah.
from the terracing onto the pitch, into the dugout, and all the way up to the boardroom. And when I used the word earlier, Daniel, unnecessary, just think where Celtic were less than 12 months ago. Think about the position the club was in.
Three, 300,
Financially,
300 days ago today, Keith, they
yeah,
were 1-0 up against Bayern Munich in the Allianz Arena.
financially, competitively on the pitch, Champions League, latter stages. How it has absolutely fallen in itself from that period on is, I think it's just, as I said, it's a case study in how to disembowel your own football club. I think it's extraordinary. And I'm not going to, and I know there'll be Celtic fans out there that don't want to hear anything nice said about Peter Lawwell, but I'm sorry. This guy has given his entire life to that football club because he feels so passionate about it. And he's effectively saying he's been hounded out by his own supporters. I find that sad. I don't think
Yeah.
there's any other
Yeah.
way to look at it. Although I'm sure there will be Celtic fans, and I understand that as well, that they feel they've been engaged in a sort of war with their own board. So this is a victory, and that'll be cause for celebration in some places. But I just feel the mess that Celtic have made of themselves. What's anybody celebrating here? What is that to celebrate?
Aye.
Celtic in a real difficult position, and I'm not sure. I don't think this is the end of it. Peter Lawwell falling on his sword will not constitute the end of this. It could be the start of the end, but that's a long way down the line as well. Does
Yeah.
anybody seriously think that Dermot Desmond is about to sell up and move on? Because that ain't happening, and it
Aye.
doesn't matter how many protests that are made. And I think that Celtic, the unrest, it should be probably more aimed towards a guy like Dermot Desmond, or a guy like Paul Tisdale, or a guy like Michael Nicholson, who's he's guilty of a dereliction of his duties as CEO. His lack of communication has been awful. Um, of all the sort of pantomime villains involved in all this, I just find it strange that Peter Lawwell is ultimately probably the big fall guy, the guy that some of these Celtic fans wanted to see his head come off more than anybody else's.
Yeah, I mean, in the comments, Davy Spears says it's a self-entitlement of Celtic fans incredible. Man's won more trophies than anyone. Celtic take a blip. The fans start having a paddy and aim the anger at the wrong people. Paul Brady also says Martin O'Neill to replace Lawwell would go some
We
way to
did
bridge
we
the gap
did
with the
float
fans.
this idea some weeks ago, Daniel,
We
on
did,
this
we
show.
did. It was mentioned. Aye.
And that's why nobody. I'm certainly not going to feign surprise by the news today. Peter Lawwell had to go, and I
Mm.
said that, and I don't know if Peter Lawwell would have been very happy about me saying that. I probably wasn't very happy about the fact that I was suggesting that Martin O'Neill, I think, would have one eye on that position should it become available at any point soon. And I would not rule it out for a second. And I could see the strategy in it in terms of this is a board which is reputationally bust with the Celtic support. But if Martin O'Neill takes up a seat at the head of the table, that could help.
Yeah.
And this does feel, if there's an opportunity here for Celtic to get some unity, for the board to, and maybe it will take a couple of sacrificial lambs as well as Peter. Um, but if there's an opportunity here to kind of wipe the slate clean and get into a period of more calm and unity, I think that's got to be embraced. And I think it wouldn't be the daftest move in the world to turn to Martin O'Neill and say, "How do you fancy it?" Because a whole new generation of Celtic supporters have just fallen in love with the guy.
Yeah.
So why wouldn't you?
In the comments again, John says Martin O'Neill doesn't have the skills to be chairman. Marzuno says behave yourselves, Peter Lawwell, to the shareholders. And I know we could talk about Peter Lawwell all night, Keith. We've got plenty of other things to talk about. But
Yeah,
just
listen again, and yes, that's correct, Marzuno. Absolutely spot on.
that was a bad look. That
A
day
lot
said
of things have been said and done over this
Aye.
last period that I think a lot of people should look back on with deep regret. And Peter Lawwell is not absolved from that. I think some of the statements that have been put out and fired around, some of the behaviours, and yeah, you can't. He should never have spoken. The chairman can't speak to the shareholders like that. So I think the whole thing feels deeply regrettable.
yeah. But I
And
would
it's
just,
come to a really messy and unpleasant end.
just to do, look, and I get as well, on top of that, I get that Celtic in Europe, pretty much since the turn of the century, Seville aside, and a couple of Champions League campaigns. I mean, they haven't won a European knockout tie since Barcelona in 2004. I get for a club Celtic's that size, that's not good enough. But in my eyes, this is Celtic's most successful period since the 60s. I mean, people saying, "Oh, there was no competition." Is that Peter Lawwell's fault? I just don't. I don't really get the vitriol that goes his way personally. But there you go.
I think Peter, never mind. Was it Peter Lawwell's fault? Peter Lawwell is really skilled, sort of back channeler, and he's got a lot of clout and he carries a lot of power in Scottish football. And I think he, at various points, has helped to manipulate situations very much to Celtic's advantage. And some people will dispute that, but I think that he politically carries a lot of weight. And I genuinely believe, and people will say I'm talking at home, my bum, but I genuinely believe he's always been motivated with doing what he believes was in the best interest for a football club that he cares passionately for.
Aye.
I don't know. Go figure.
Aye.
I know that. Listen, this is one of those. We're not going to. You can say one thing. You can take a certain position on this. You're never going to please anybody. Might please very little by saying some of this stuff tonight. But that's my view on it. My view on it is that this guy has been like a behemoth for Celtic in the boardroom. He's carried the club. He's reshaped the club. He's shifted the parameters around it. He's changed the backdrop of Scottish football in doing so, and he's made Celtic, by far and away the strongest, most successful club, and certainly this side of the century, hasn't he? It's been a phenomenal success, Celtic, and yet it ends like this.
Aye. There you go. People having their say in the comment section, please continue to do so. But Keith, there's a game tonight. A very big game for Celtic and a very big game.
Oh, and that feeds right back into the car crash narrative, doesn't it?
A very big game, not only for Celtic, but for Wilfried Nancy. He's not had a great night overnight. His social media, his Twitter account has been discovered by Celtic fans. He's updated his profile picture. I don't want to get too bogged down in this because, it feels like kid stuff at times, but it's just another facet of this whole Nancy, appointment that's just gone wrong. I mean, that was his Twitter profile picture last night. Reads to me like a sort of 52-year-old divorced woman, live, laugh, love after a second bottle of wine. It's just a wee bit sort of toe curling, I'm sorry, Wilfried, but it's a wee bit cringy.
Do you know what it screams of a little bit? And you know that I've got a bit of a hang up with this, the coaching from the classroom sort of a thing. That looks like a slide that's from a PowerPoint presentation or something like that. And he's not done himself any favours with it, because I think the sort of response to it has been quite furious. And that's a shame in itself, because the guy's just trying to say what he believes in, I guess. I've got a problem with it though, in terms of consistency, because it was only a couple of days ago he was saying that when he became a coach, he decided to shut down all his social media. Doesn't look at social media, doesn't look at what anybody's saying about him. But then he did that, and then he shut it down when he obviously looked at the comments that it provoked. So he is looking at social media. He's not shut it down, and this whole thing has backfired on him. And it does. You're right. Listen, I've walked away from Lennoxtown yesterday afternoon, Daniel, on the show, saying, listen, my big takeaway from meeting Wilfried Nancy for the first time yesterday was, what a really pleasant big guy. What a really nice big fella. Whether or not he's walked into the wrong movie, that's a different matter entirely. But a nice guy. But I think he's, and it seems to be this sort of illness that's ripping through Celtic, this virus that's ripping through Celtic at the minute, that you can't do right for doing wrong.
Mm-hmm.
You can't say anything without getting pounced upon by your own people. And now, just to compound matters, he's got to take his team up to Tannadice tonight. And I don't think, given the way the evidence of the first 3 games, I don't think you could confidently predict that Celtic are going to get in and out of the City of Discovery with three league points tucked away, which probably means that it just cranks up to another level before they're even back in the team bus to come back down the road tonight. And this is where Celtic are at right now. It's a mess. It really is a mess on every conceivable front.
We both said on last night's show, for anyone that watched, that neither of us fancy Celtic to get a win tonight. I think you said a draw, didn't you, Keith?
I could see a draw. I think it's got a draw written all over it this game, and that's not going to be enough. That's not going to appease anybody. That's another 2 points dropped.
I mean, you obviously met Nancy yesterday, as you say. What is your? I mean, I'm asking you how long a piece of string is, but look, do we reach a point where if this goes to 5, 6, 7 games that a win, where everyone just kind of looks at each other and goes, "Look, this has just been a mess, a disaster, wrong movie."
Well, do you know what we couldn't speak about last night because of the embargo rules and all this? But you know, he laughed at one point. He says, "Look, guys, I know that my ass is burning here." That was the exact phrase that he used. So he's completely aware that this isn't anywhere near good enough. He's completely aware of the ferocious backlash that there's been amongst the Celtic supporters. He gets it all. The question is, can he do something meaningful about turning it around and putting the flames out? Because he's right. His ass is on fire, and he's going to have to do something about taking the heat out of it. And the only thing that I could recommend to him would be win some matches and start tonight. But given that what we've seen tactically, how this team looks, how it defends, how it's set up, how confused the players have looked with what they're being asked to do and the instructions coming on from the sidelines, I think it's a long shot to expect Celtic to go to Tannadice tonight and win the game. And that's incredible in itself.
John in the comments says, we'll be lucky to get a draw tonight. That said, don't forget Nancy hasn't had a pre-season with these players and none of the players are his. That's true. That's it. John's spot on.
100%.
That's the point. How can you implement this new 3-4-3 at this stage of the season? I mean, he's had the
because quite clearly he believes in it.
Of course.
And that's a problem for me as well, John. That I look at it and I think your manager, your first responsibility, is to assess what you've got in the dressing room, where the strengths are, where the weaknesses are, and then put out a team which is given the best chance tactically of achieving what it needs to achieve. And I think that he's put his principles before any sort of pragmatism with us. It remains to be seen. Maybe the penny drops. Maybe he goes to Tannadice and he makes changes tonight. Maybe he puts players in their natural positions all over the pitch, and maybe Celtic benefit from it. But my sort of takeaway from Lennoxtown yesterday was that that's highly unlikely to happen. I think you'll get more of the same, and I think you're going to get more of the same now, and it'll be hit or miss stuff. And maybe Celtic somewhere along the line will start to gain some traction and some momentum. But I think it's going to be difficult all the way up to the transfer window opening, and then at that point, I do expect Wilfried Nancy to have a say in identifying the sort of profile of the players that Celtic go for in the January window. And then Celtic fans are just going to sit there, cross their fingers and have to hope that once he's out the other side of it, that his team looks a whole lot better than it has done in the first 3 games.
The other kind of Celtic stuff that I want to get your take on, Keith, very briefly, was Brendan Rodgers. He had his press conference today as Al Qadisa. Again, I might be butchering that, but the new manager in Saudi Arabia. We kind of queried whether or not he would talk much about Celtic. He didn't really. He just simply referred to Celtic as a huge institution. I'm disappointed, obviously. It's been great to see him come out and respond to Dermot Desmond, but no luck so far.
Well, you asked me about it the other night, and I think we were talking with Mick Gannon, and I sort of predicted that I couldn't see him coming out and taking the scattergun out now. It's been too long. I think the temptation to do that would have been enormous for him from the moment that he saw that scandalous statement from Dermot Desmond. He's resisted. Now, we can only speculate as to the reasons behind why he has resisted. But clearly, when given the chance and the platform today, he chose not to take it, not to fire any shots back. It seems to me very much as if he just wants to move on and quietly forget how it all ended for him at Celtic, and perhaps some of the characters around that ending. But yeah, another really unsatisfactory moment. Another really, incredible black mark on this season of carnage and self-created carnage. The statement itself, the whole fact that he was bounced into resigning, everything about this has just been it's like Celtic have lost their minds this season.
And it's all self-inflicted as well. All completely self-inflicted.
All completely self-inflicted. When you consider where they were 12 months ago, it's staggering, really unbelievable. As I said to you, years from now, there'll be some case study about this. How to bring your own football club down brick by brick from the inside. That's what's happening right now, and it is really difficult to see where the light starts coming in at the end of the tunnel. And I don't suppose, Daniel, that any light is going to start coming in down the tunnel at Tannadice tonight. I think the situation is already toxic and is probably about to get a little bit worse.
Well, I guess we'll see. Across the city, Keith, a little bit of light in the sense, in the shape of a new sporting director for Rangers. Stig Inge Bjørnebye is at least
I remember him as a player.
A 6-month basis. Looks so much like that old wrestler Kurt Angle. Honestly, for anyone watching,
I have no idea to who you're referring there.
I used to watch the WWF back in my youth, and
wow, man! Some things you want to think about. There's a thing you can do, Dan. It's actually sort of a vet your own comments before your mouth, filter them or something.
No, but
why
I'm bringing
telling the world that you watch the wrestling?
Aye, when I was a kid, but I'm saying, see, when we go to America in the summer, Keith, we can get some autographs in that. I'll show you some of that. Don't worry, I'll introduce you to no Hulk Hogan. He's passed away now, but anyway.
I know Hulk Hogan because he was in Rocky.
There you go.
No problem with saying that I'm a massive Rocky fan. So
there you go. But Stig Inge Bjørnebye, to get back to football, he's the new Rangers sporting director for 6 months at least. This is obviously a Kevin Thelwell replacement. We don't know much. Obviously, you remember him as a player at Liverpool, Blackburn, teams like that. Don't know much about him obviously as a sporting director, but you can only imagine it's a good thing for Rangers.
He's been around about a couple of bigger Scandinavian clubs in this sort of a position, and that's where he's cut his teeth. Look, I might be a million miles out here, but it feels to me, my concern would be that this could be another Greta Steinsson production. That Greta Steinsson has kind of not sanctioned but championed this idea. And I've said previously, if I was Andrew Kavanagh and the American guys in there just now, I would need to be very careful about the advice that I was getting when it came to making appointments, because whoever it is they've been listening to over the previous while has sold them a variety of pups. And I think Greta Steinsson's been a central character in all of this. Perhaps that's why this it's almost like a trial basis, doesn't it? You got 6 months to the end of the season. Let's see how it goes. Which tells you that there's an element of uncertainty about even now where Rangers are looking to go under Andrew Kavanagh, even though he's cleared the decks essentially of the sporting director and the chief exec. There still seems to be a little bit of uncertainty around next steps and where they're heading. And I think that's understandable, in terms of that they've really had their fingers burnt. So is this Stig Inge Bjørnebye Greta Steinsson's guy? Does that explain why, do you know what, we'll be handing out a massive contract here. You can get 6 months and
See how it
treat it
goes.
almost like a trial period.
Aye.
But I think Rangers certainly, it was a surprise to many when Andrew Kavanagh bulleted Kevin Thelwell and Patrick Stewart, that there were some people around about the rest of the recruitment, most notably his best pal Dan Purdy, his son Robbie Thelwell, who were kept on. But we did say, or I certainly said at the time, I think you'll find that there will be more changes a little bit further down the line. I think what they couldn't do was empty out the entire department.
Yeah.
At a time when you're coming up to a January transfer window, you had to have some sort of continuity in there. But I would have expect change in the longer term, and maybe this is the first step towards that.
What about
Is he Greta Steinson's man or not? I don't know.
We're about, Keith, to be joined from Prague by Record Sports Scott Burns. Just before we do that, though, you've written a column on Rangers, and we were talking last night about the fact that, I mean, it seems mad to me that arguably the worst Rangers team of all time, with the most disastrous start to any season they've had since, 1890s or whatever it was, there's 3 points behind Celtic tonight going into tonight's game, but you're not having it. You don't think you think this?
They're 3 points behind Celtic going into tonight's game, and if they win at Tynecastle on Sunday, they'll climb to within 6 points of Hearts, but with a game in hand. And on that basis, and on the stats alone, Daniel, there's no other way of looking at this. If that set of circumstances was to come about, you would have to say that Rangers are bona fide title challengers. You just have to.
You have to, either there,
numbers, the numbers say it, the stats say it. But I've kind of taken an alternative view, which is, and the stats are, first of all, if you look purely at the numbers involved, right? Because this is a nice, interesting moment to sort of examine it. Rangers were 8 games into the league season when Danny Rowell was appointed. He's now had 8 games of his own.
Yep.
So in the first 8 games, 7 of which Russell Martin was responsible for, Rangers took 9 points from a possible 24.
Won one of them, I think, didn't they?
Won one game, and the win percentage was at 12.5%, right? Which is extraordinary in itself, right? And that accounted for that return of 9 points from 24 equals 33.33% of the available points over that first 8 games of the season. Danny Rowell comes in. He's taken 20 points from 24 as opposed to 9. His win percentage is 75%, and as opposed to 33.33% of the points available, he's taken 83.33% of the points available. These are massive numbers in his favour.
Yeah.
And yet I cannot get away from the fact that's the sort of data-driven evidence. The evidence of your own eyes tells you that's not a team that's anywhere near a serious title challenge, not even remotely close to one. And that's why I would look at that side and have grave concerns for them getting in and out. The same way as I'm worried about Celtic tonight, I'd be very worried about Rangers getting in and out of Tynecastle unharmed on Sunday afternoon. I think Hearts have got better players all over the pitch, a far more experienced manager. They've got, the 2 top scorers in the top flight just now, in Shankland and Claudio Braga. They've got probably the best centre of defence in the league just now with Halkett and Stuart Finlay. They've got my candidate for the player of the season so far in Cammy Devlin in centre midfield. All over the pitch, you feel that they're better than Rangers. And for that reason, I think any notion, I think Danny Rowell deserves enormous amount of credit for these stats and for the fact that he's dragged Rangers kicking and screaming into a position like this. But I think any notion that they can get any closer or take it any further could get blown out the water at Tynecastle this weekend.
It'll be a cracker, whatever happens. One game that comes before that, though, Keith, is tomorrow night in Prague. We're joined by the one and only Record Sports Scott Burns. Burnsy, how is the Prague nightlife?
I don't know. I went to my bed early last night because obviously I had a press conference today. The ultimate professional here. And obviously I knew it was a quiet day back home today as well, so there's not much happening, is there?
Aye, that's it.
No,
very
it's been
struggling
quiet,
for things
Burnsy,
to talk about. Obviously, Aberdeen, I think I'm right in saying mathematically, are now out of the Conference League. They can't go any further. Sparta Prague, I haven't seen much of them, but I imagine it'll be a very hard test for them tomorrow night, Aberdeen.
I mean, it will be, because Sparta Prague, as it stands, they still need to win to guarantee to automatically go into the group stages. So, or they could still fall into the playoffs. So they obviously want to go through automatically. So they'll want to sign off that last game with a win to guarantee that. As you say, Aberdeen don't have anything to play for in terms of qualification, but it's still a big game for Aberdeen, because they still want to sign off this European campaign with a win. You know what I mean? They haven't had a win in it so far. It'd be a big thing. £400,000, €400,000, I think it's up for grabs for a win as well. So it would still be big for Aberdeen, you know what I mean? And in terms of, I think, confidence for the players as well, if they can get a result at this level, you know what I mean, I think it would set things up nicely for maybe if they can get back into Europe next season. So although a lot of people might see it as a dead rubber, I mean, there's still pride to play for. And I think there's 1,800 Aberdeen fans at least out here, so we need to try and put a show on for those fans as well.
And I think as well, I'm right in saying that Aberdeen, I think it's 7 games unbeaten domestically now. It does kind of feel like, I mean, I don't know what you guys both think, Jimmy Tillene's maybe turned a wee bit of a corner.
But certainly domestically, they've turned the corner, you know what I mean? They've got good players, they're climbing the league now, you know what I mean? The issue being that the Conference League, I know it's the bottom of the European competitions, but it's still a step up. And I was quite critical of Aberdeen only getting 2 points so far in this group stage, which I still think I agree with. You know, I've taken a bit of stick from Aberdeen fans about it, but I agree with it. I think Aberdeen should be sitting on more points than they are just now. I'm not saying they should have qualified, but certainly I think they should have beaten No at home. If they'd taken some of the chances against Strasbourg early on, they could have got something out of that. So I still think they could have taken more points than they have, but there is certainly signs of improvement. And in terms of the European campaign, I mean, they lost it obviously heavily in Greece to AK Athens. But apart from that, there have been a couple of draws, and the other ones have been narrow defeats. So they haven't been that far away, but big moments in these matches, it's fine margins, you know. Aberdeen have had chances where they've not taken them, and at the other end, they've maybe been punished by one mistake sort of thing. So at this level, you have to get things right and spot on in the night, and so far they haven't done that.
Bunzi, we were talking about Rangers there just before coming to you. Am I right in saying that you've spoken to the Slavia Prague manager today, who talked about how close he came to actually becoming the Rangers manager round about, well, it was last summer, wasn't it, when Russell Martin got the job?
It was in the summer. Yeah, we spoke to him on camera. He was on the mic, and he basically said that, you know, he didn't say very much. He just said, look, I'd rather keep these things confidential and private. I think there might have been some discussions off camera where certainly he was 100%.
A different direction.
Let's say 100% he spoke to Rangers in the summer. I think he might have been surprised he didn't get it, but the official line was that he's very happy to be Sparta Prague manager, and the way things have worked out, he's happy in the job he's in. That was on the record.
Yeah.
We've got one of the comments coming in, Burnsy. Scott says Aberdeen will have Celtic on Sunday. Will the rest players tomorrow night, do you think?
Yeah, I think that Jimmy Tillon has said in the press conference tonight that there's a few players that haven't had much football and much European football. I think a few of them will get a run out tomorrow night, and they obviously have an eye on Sunday. As I said, it's still big in terms of the prize money. It's an offer for a win, but Aberdeen are now in the top 6. They want that's the minimum. Now they want to push on and try and challenge them for them European spots and higher if they can. You know what I mean? And the one thing about Jimmy Tillon is that as a manager, in terms of his results at Aberdeen, he's one streaky manager. You know what I mean? He goes in long runs of where he can't get a win, and long wins or winning runs. So if they can continue this win and run, you know what I mean, they could get back up there. But then again, the hope is that if that win and run ends, that they don't fall off a cliff like they did last season.
Keith, can you see them Aberdeen getting a result in Prague tomorrow night?
No. I mean, listen, do you know what? I think the European arena has been good for Aberdeen recently, the last few games, because I think it's given them a foothold, a platform to build something on this season. when they were in desperate need. I think that maybe the pressure coming off a little bit of the escapism of getting into Europe has been good for them. I think it's helped with confidence levels. But as Scott says there, this is a Sparta Prague side which is in need of the points to confirm its own qualification. It's away from home. I'd be surprised if Aberdeen took anything from that.
I just think that...
Sorry, go on, Burnsy, sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to say the timing of it. I think Aberdeen are coming at a bit of form. I mean, they signed a lot of players in the summer, obviously. It took them a while to hit the ground. And I think that they are starting to come together now. It would have been interesting to see if Aberdeen were starting the European campaign now. I think they would go on far better, but the problem is that it took them too long to get going. It took too long for players to get gelled, and they probably just gelled at the wrong time. And I think you'll look back at this campaign as probably an opportunity missed, despite the fact that, it is a hard group. And when you look at the actual league sections, I think the majority of the teams that Aberdeen have faced are all in the qualification spots and certainly in the top six. So it's been a hard draw, but but it's one I still think one they'll look back on with a bit of regret.
Before we let you go, Burnsy, what's your prediction?
It's not going to get any warmer.
That's a good prediction.
I'm about 5 yards away from a skating rink here, but I'm not on the ice for too long with my predictions. I think Aberdeen might get something here. I think one each. There you go.
Interesting. There you go. Burnsy, have a great time in Prague. I know you'll be getting an early night tonight, checking out
big
the
game tomorrow
and that. But I hope it all goes well for you.
It's a public holiday tomorrow, so I don't think they're open. So I need to do some online research.
Nightmare. I'm sure you'll cope.
See, the worry for me is, Burnsy, that you've got that big jacket on. I can just imagine once this camera goes down, you peeling off the jacket and you've got your sort of spandex ice skating costume on.
Spandex? This is Eddie Eagle.
What?
Eddie Eagle here.
he's borrowed that from Nick Gannon. We know he likes his spandex.
Mick's got a solo line in that, not me. That's an exclusive range. On that note, I think I better leave.
It's a cracking game, Keith. All right, Burnsy, and all the best.
All the best, gents. Take care.
Cheers, Scott Burns there in Prague, Keith. And just before we sign off, the sniper wants to know what's your favourite Rocky. Has to be 3 for him.
I do like 3.
That's the one.
I think one is the classic. Right? Two is really good. 2's terrific. The rematch with Apollo Creed. 3, I loved it. Maybe it's a timing thing. I was young, but I loved Rocky 3. My only problem is, and I'll leave you with this. My only problem is I cry every time I watch Rocky 3 because Mickey dies, and I can't handle it.
That is sad. Excellent. On that note, that brings us to the end of Wednesday night's Hotline Live with Record Sport. Thanks for all your comments. Thanks for getting in touch.
I'm an emotional man, Daniel.
Listen, between you're slagging me for the rest, and I think that's worse. We should hold a poll on the website, but we'll see.
Okay.
Thanks for all your comments tonight. We massively appreciate it. We'll be back tomorrow at 6 p.m. to pour over tonight's result from Tannadice and everything else that happens in the wide world of Scottish football between now and then. Keith, it's always a pleasure.
Yep. Cheers, Dan. See you tomorrow.
Yep. Thank you very much. And thanks for watching at home. Hope you can join us tomorrow. Cheers.